Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Walt and I are so glad. Do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Walt and I are so glad that we can finally celebrate. We have been looking forward to this evening for such a long, long time. And it finally happened. Thank you very much for coming. I see people in the audience who have helped us a lot. And we would have not made it without you. Thank you so very much for helping us. Can I also lift this mic and carry it without me?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. I prefer to walk around a little bit. At the beginning, we didn't even have a computer. So we worked a lot at the Fairfield Public Library. And we know therefore firsthand how kind and how knowledgeable and how helpful everybody who works at the library is. Our library is really an incubator for creative ideas. This is not a book about science. Walt and I have decided to collect the most interesting quotes by Albert Einstein about the meaning of life. Contrary to popular opinion, Einstein was not the kind of distracted scientist, you know, the guy whose hair stands up and who doesn't know where to find his shoes. He was actually, in reality, very well informed about world politics. And he also was very interested in what's going on around him. He was a lifelong peace activist. For Albert Einstein, there would have been no progress and no peace without personal freedom and without culture. And so he just wanted that we humans get along and that we use our common sense and that we create peace. He thought that we can make it because we all, by nature, are good. Today, we live in the golden age of astronomy. There has never been so much incredible information about what's going on in space available to us. And there certainly have never been so many beautiful pictures. And so Walt and I have decided to illustrate Einstein's words with the most interesting and most stunning pictures of space available. We have pictures by amateur astronomers and by observatories all over the world. And we also have pictures which have been made by satellites. Some satellites are in orbit around the Earth, like the Hubble Space Telescope, and others go out into space. And then they collect information and send it back to the Earth. And we even have one picture which has been made by humans who were in orbit around the moon. When the astronauts went around the moon, they looked back and they took a picture of the Earth. And this is one of my favorites. So Walt would like to show you some highlights. And after that, if anybody has any questions, you are very welcome to ask them. And then we'll just celebrate. I'm looking very much forward to meet with all my friends for whom I haven't had any time lately. Please feel free to help yourself to some snacks. They are all organic.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. So, before we talk about our book, I'd just like to show you a couple of brief film clips. The first one is of Albert Einstein speaking to a large audience at the Royal Albert Hall in London in 1933.
I am glad that you have me given the opportunity of expressing to you here my deep sense of gratitude as a man, as a good European, and as a Jew. It cannot be my task today to act as judge of the conduct of a nation which for many years has considered me as her own. We are concerned not merely with the technical problem of securing and maintaining peace, but also with the important task of education and enlightenment. Without such freedom, there would have been no Shakespeare, no Goethe, no Newton, no Faraday, no Pasteur, and no Lister.
As Magda said, we live in a golden age of astronomy. This is because science and technology have progressed to the point that we now can gaze deep into the universe. We now know that 1 out of 5 sun-like stars in our galaxy have habitable planets. This is the newest finding from Keck in Hawaii and from I believe it's the UCLA. They've done a study, and that's the results of it. 22% of the stars in our galaxy are sun-like stars. This means that in our galaxy there are billions of habitable planets like the Earth. What we are about to see is called Hubble's ultra-deep field in 3D.
Astronomers in 1996 attempted to do something extraordinary. They pointed the Hubble Space Telescope into a part of the sky that seemed utterly empty, a patch devoid of any planets, stars, and galaxies. This area was close to the Big Dipper, a very familiar constellation, and the patch of sky was no bigger than a grain of sand held out at arm's length. This was a somewhat risky move by the scientists. After all, observing time on this telescope is in very high demand, and some questioned whether it would be wasted trying to look at nothing. There was a real risk that the images returned would be as black as the space at which it was being pointed. Nevertheless, they opened the telescope, and slowly, over the course of 10 full days, photons that had been traveling for over 13 billion years finally ended their journey on the detector of humanity's most powerful telescope. Their feeble signals collected almost one by one. When the telescope was finally closed and the images were processed, the light from over 3,000 galaxies had covered the detector, producing one of the most profound and humbling images in all of human history. Every single spot, smear, and dot was an entire galaxy, and each one containing hundreds of billions of stars. Later, in 2004, they did it again, this time pointing the telescope towards an area near the constellation Orion. They opened the shutter for over 11 days and 400 complete orbits around the Earth. Using detectors with increased sensitivity and filters that allowed more light through than ever before, over 10,000 galaxies appeared in what became known as the ultra-deep field, an image that represented the farthest we've ever seen into the universe. The photons from these galaxies left when the universe was only 500 million years old, and 13 billion years later, they end their long journey as a small blip on a telescope CCD. These galaxies, while standing absolutely still, are racing away from us, in some cases faster than the speed of light. The space-time between us and everything else grows larger by the minute, pushing the galaxies in this image to a distance of over 47 billion light years. And because of universal expansion, the farther something is away from us, the more its light is shifted toward the red, and the faster it appears to be moving. Edwin Hubble himself discovered this by measuring the redshift of many galaxies, and it's a measure of not only speed, but distance as well. Recently, Hubble scientists put the icing on the cake. Using the measured redshifts of all the galaxies inside the image, they made a 3D model of the ultra-deep field. This is how it looks when we apply the distances of the galaxies in the most important image ever taken. There are over 100 billion galaxies in the universe. Simply saying that number doesn't really mean much to us because it doesn't provide any context. Our brains have no way to accurately put that in any meaningful perspective. When we look at this image, however, and think about the context of how it was made, and really understand what it means, we instantly gain the perspective and cannot help but be forever changed by it. We pointed the most powerful telescope ever built by human beings at absolutely nothing, for no other reason than because we were curious, and discovered that we occupy a very tiny place in the heavens.
What we're looking at, in September 2012, NASA scientists with the Hubble Space Telescope combined many images to form this picture. They were collected over a period of 10 years with the Hubble, and they combined this. What you're looking at is a small section of the Hubble Deep Field, and this picture contains more than 5,500 galaxies. And as the narrator said, our entire universe is, of course, more than 100 billion galaxies. So it's really an awesome picture. And for a few moments, I'll let you look at it quietly.
And by the way, for those who don't do science, this is a baby picture of the universe.
Yeah, this picture represents the universe at about 500 billion, excuse me, million, 500 million years after the Big Bang. So it's very far in the past that we're looking. And as Magda said, it's a baby picture of the universe.
This picture has been taken by Radim. He is a graduate of our local university and extremely inventive. He makes those wonderful photographs of fireflies without any additional gizmos and lights, and has already won an award from the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. for one of his photographs. And we are really happy to have one of his pictures in the book.
We felt the need to write on the brief topic of Albert Einstein's scientific legacy and his contributions to science.
And we also wanted to write a few paragraphs about the focus of the book, namely world peace and the responsibility of science. But most of all, we wanted to bring out Einstein's sense of awe and wonder, which he very often describes when he contemplates the laws of the universe.
This beautiful photograph is taken by Robert Gindler. He's an amateur astronomer. The mirror in his telescope is only 12.5 inches in diameter. This means that, and he took 40 separate shots over a period of about 2 months, and he combined them digitally. And this Astronomy magazine named it as one of the greatest picture photographs in astronomy in the last 30 years. It's Andromeda Galaxy. It's somewhat similar to our own galaxy. So you're more or less looking at something that looks like your galaxy. This photograph is a photo from the European Southern Observatory in Chile. It's a spiral galaxy. This is a Hubble image. It's a galactic nebula.
Is the text what Einstein has said?
The text in the book is Einstein. And we just did the introduction with Alice.
But the captions for the pictures are by the photographers themselves or by NASA who worked on them.
Yeah, and there's other observatories, European Southern, as I said, the Canadian French, Hawaiian telescope, and several other observatories, and also spacecraft that were sent out to the planets. The Galileo spacecraft took this photograph on its way to Jupiter. This is the Earth and its moon.
What did Einstein say about the meaning of life?
Oh, he had quite a bit to say about it. When he was young, he wanted to grow up to be a philosopher. But then at the age of 12, he found science and he fell in love with it, and he decided to be a physicist instead. Probably good for us. Well, let's hope. But he had wonderful discoveries. His discoveries have led to an understanding of the universe in a very profound way. We now know how the stars burn, how the energy, the sun produces light. We know about the Big Bang. We know about black holes. We know about gravitational waves. And we know many things now, and we're discovering new things every day thanks to Albert Einstein.
Could you read a little bit of what his text says?
Sure. What is the meaning of human life, or organic life altogether? To answer this question at all implies a religion. Is there any sense then, you ask, in putting it? I answer, the man who regards his own life and that of his fellow creatures as meaningless is not merely unfortunate, but almost disqualified for life. This is a beautiful nebula called the Rosette, because it appears red in all photographs in big telescopes.
Could you read the text of that one too?
Okay. Of what is significant in one's own existence, one is hardly aware, and it certainly should not bother the other fellow. What does a fish know about the water in which he swims in all his life? The bitter and the sweet come from the outside. The hard is the hard from within, from one's own efforts. For the most part, I do the thing which my own nature drives me to do. It is embarrassing to earn so much respect and love for it. Arrows of hate have been shot at me too, but they never hit me, because somehow they belong to another world with which I have no connection whatsoever. I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in the years of maturity. Okay, this photograph is from lunar orbit. This was the Apollo 8 crew. They were the first to orbit the moon. They were an early mission to orbit the moon and come back. And this photograph was taken on Christmas Eve, 1979. And we probably all remember that as Americans because it was a wonderful moment. And this picture is very famous. It helped inspire the environmental, human rights, and world peace movements by giving us a holistic vision of our blessed place in the universe. An enormous cluster of galaxies in the Draco constellation, some 2 billion light years from Earth. Its massive gravitational field magnifies, brightens, and distorts the light of more distant objects, the phenomenon known as gravitational lens predicted by Einstein's general theory of relativity. The arc-shaped patterns found throughout this image are the light of those distant objects. This is a planetary nebula. This is the sunflower. The star in the center is where this gas has been blown out from. Yeah, it's a nova. And supernova completely destroy the star, and that's what our bodies are made out of, is remnants of supernova explosions. This is an X-ray picture of the sun by the Yoko spacecraft. It was built by the Japanese and launched by America, and it's at the height of the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This is the giant star Antares in the constellation Scorpius. This is a galaxy. They call it a Higgs object, but it's a galaxy. This is another X-ray, and this is of a neutron star in Cassiopeia A. It's the remnants of a supernova explosion. This photograph was taken by another amateur astronomer. His name's Gary Stevens. It's very beautiful. It's called the Witch Head Nebula. It's the remnants of a supernova explosion. This is the Cone Nebula. About God, I cannot accept any concept based on the authority of the Church. As long as I can remember, I have resented mass indoctrination. I do not believe in the fear of life and the fear of death in blind faith. I cannot prove to you that there is no personal God, but if I were to speak of him, I would be a liar. I do not believe in the God of theology who rewards and punishes evil. My God created laws that take care of that. His universe is not ruled by wishful thinking, but by immutable laws. This is the galaxy called the Sombrero. Yeah, it does. God is subtle, but he is not malicious. I want to know how God created this world. I am not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details.
This is a mosaic made by Rohan János in Hungary. Planetary nebulae.
This is called the Eagle Nebula, and the very tips of these streamers coming out, they're just like points on the ends. Those are as big as our solar system.
And are those all just masses of stars?
No, that's gases of dust clouds and hydrogen and helium and remnants of supernova explosions. And stars are born in these giant clouds. And when the stars begin to heat up, they blast away the clouds, and then they just stand free as stars. Here's a quote I'd like to read. This is the Hubble Deep Field, Ultra Deep Field. Look deep, deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better. And nature hides her secrets through her intrinsic grandeur, not through deception. The eternal mystery of the world is its comprehensibility. That the world is comprehensible is a miracle. The Australian astrophotographer David Mallon made this beautiful photograph. This is the most comprehensive collection of nebular types ever seen in one photograph.
Walt started the book many, many years ago, but then there were years when he didn't work on it. Would you like to say more, Walt?
Yeah, that.
And if you would compress it into 8-hour days, it would be probably between 5 and 7 years altogether for 2 people to work on, not only one.
How much does it cost? And does anybody want to be in a group where we read it out loud to each other?
We brought some books tonight, and everyone's welcome to buy one. It retails $17.95, but we sell it $20 because we pay shipping charges, and we'll sign it very happily. And this is a book signing too, if there's enough time. Yeah, and there will be. We have to be out of here though completely by 10 o'clock. It's like Cinderella, or the pumpkin will turn into the carriage will turn into a pumpkin, and the mice into, the horses into mice. So.
Margot has a question.
Oh, Margot.
I heard from you that you gathered much more photos, and can you explain a little bit what kind of work it is to print any one of those photos?
Yeah. In the early days when we started working, it was actually 1990, around then. That was just when the library started really getting seriously computers and the internet and all. And so we had the opportunity to download these wonderful pictures from NASA. And so it also helped us to get the endorsements. And it was just phenomenal. It's really, if it wasn't for the public library, we couldn't have done it. And then a few years later, the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship at Harvard Medical School bought us a computer. I have a respiratory problem, and so I couldn't afford a computer, and so that's why we were using the library facilities. And then we got a computer, and we started working on it, and Magda spent time working on the design.
I think that's about all. We had so many pictures, it was ridiculous. We had like a whole box full of, and it was too much. So we finally decided that I should learn a few basics of design, and then I redesigned everything. That was already about the 4th version of the manuscript, and it was finally presentable.
And we sent it off. In the beginning, we were hoping to avoid getting an agent, and so we went to medium-sized publishers, and we sent out to many of those, and they liked it, but they just, after a while, we got the information back. The reason they were rejecting it is it's expensive to produce, and so we got an agent because we thought, well, we got to get a big publisher, and so we got Sterling Publishing because we had an agent. And it's a $100 million company owned by Barnes & Noble, and they have 1,000 stores across the United States. 600 of them are university bookstores, and we were very fortunate.
And all the time we were still hoping to have a coffee table book, but thank God Sterling knew the market better than we, and they published something which is more affordable, yet still beautiful.
So maybe it's time now to have a party, and we got organic cookies and juice, and we can, we got book signing if anyone's interested.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.